All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're dialing in from. It is time for our morning reading. So I want to welcome everybody here. We are in the process of reading the book, The Cash Flow Quadrants by Robert Kiyosaki. I'm going to get you the link. I'm going to put it in the chat for those of you who may not have the book. Here let's see here. Let's go to our Zoom. I'm going to put it in the chat, and that way you will have full access to the book. And according to the link here on the book, we're going to be starting. Let me go ahead and share my screen because I'm going to let you see the book as well. And let's see here. Voila. Put a 1 in the chat if you see the book appearing on the screen. I just want to make sure everybody has the view of it. And
we see it, Eric. Good morning.
beautiful. Good morning. Good morning. Now you see me too.
Yep.
Good morning.
Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday, my friend. Another week has completed. Another good week. Another great week. And there's no better way to start the weekend than with some good positive information, surrounded by great positive people, all on a mission to help others improve their lives financially. So I'm going to go ahead and get started for all of you that are here. And okay, 3 new. Beautiful. Thank you, Ron, as well for responding. So here we are, chapter 3. As you can see in the top bar there, that this is page 86 in this PDF. And let me just see if by chance, if they have page numbers here. Yeah, 57 in the book. So there's some additional notes and stuff. This is a great PDF for you to refer back to, go back and forth. You can print out pieces that you want, even if you don't have the book, so that you can highlight, write, remember, and so forth. So chapter 3, why people choose security over freedom. Many people seek job security because that's what they are taught, both at school and at home. Both of my dads recommended that I go to college and get a degree, but it was after receiving the degree that their advice took different paths. My highly educated dad constantly advised go to school, get good grades, and then get a good, safe, secure job. He was recommending a life path focused on the left side of the cash flow quadrant that looks like this. Go to school, the arrow takes you to the employee quadrant or to the self-employed quadrant. Next page. Their advice was different because one dad was concerned with job security and the other focused on financial freedom. Why people seek job security. The primary reason many people seek job security is because that's what they're taught to seek both at school and at home. As adults, millions of people still continue to follow that advice. Many of us are conditioned from our earliest days to think about job security rather than financial security or financial freedom. And because most of us learn little to nothing about money at home or at school, it's only natural that we cling to even more, that we cling ever more tightly to the idea of job security instead of reaching for freedom. If you look at the cash flow quadrant, you'll notice that the left side is motivated by security, the right side is motivated by freedom. Trapped by debt. The main reason that 90% of the population is working on the left side is because that's the side they learned about at school. After leaving school, they often end up with lots of expenses and may fall into debt. This means they must cling ever tighter to a job or to professional security just to pay the bills. I often meet young people who receive their college diploma along with the bill for the college loans. Several of them told me that they're depressed when they see that they are in debt thousands and thousands of dollars for their college education. If their parents paid the bill, then the parents are strapped financially for years. Most Americans today will receive a credit card while in school and will be in debt for the rest of their lives. That's because they're often following a script that became popular in the industrial age, which, by the way, we're not in. Following the script. If we track the life of an average educated person, the financial script often goes like this. The child goes to school, graduates, finds a job, and soon has some money to spend. The young adult now can afford to rent an apartment, buy electronics, new clothes, some furniture, and of course, a car. Soon the bills begin to come in. One day, the adult meets someone special and sparks fly. They fall in love and get married. For a while, life is blissful because two can live as cheaply as one. With only one rent to pay, they can afford to set a few dollars aside to buy the dream of all young couples, their own home. They find a house, pull their money out of savings, and use it for a down payment. Now they have a mortgage. Because they have a new house, they need new furnishings. So they find a furniture store that advertises those magic words: no money down, easy monthly payments. Life is wonderful. And they throw a party to have all their friends over to see the new house, the new car, the new furniture, and the new toys. They're already deeply in debt. And then the first child arrives. After dropping the child off at nursery school, the average couple must now put the nose to the grindstone and go to work. They become trapped by the need for job security simply because, on average, they're less than 3 months away from financial bankruptcy. These people will often say, I can't afford to quit. I have bills to pay. The success trap. One of the reasons I learned so much from my rich dad was because he had the free time to teach me. As he grew more successful, he had more free time and money. His business got better, but he didn't have to work harder. He simply had his president expand the system and hire more people to do the work. If his investments did well, he reinvested the money and made more money. Instead of working, he spent hours with his son and me explaining to us everything he was doing in business and investing. I was learning more from him than I was learning at school. That's what happens when you work hard on the right side of the cash flow quadrant, the B and I side. My highly educated dad worked hard too, but he worked hard on the left side. By working hard, getting promoted, and taking on more responsibility, he had less and less free time to spend with his kids. He would leave for work at 7 a.m., and many times we wouldn't see him because we had to go to bed before he got home. That's what happens when you work hard and become successful in the E and S quadrants. Success brings you less and less time, even if it does bring you more money. So that's the success trap. Now, the money trap. Success on the B and I side requires a particular kind of knowledge about money called financial intelligence. Rich Dad said that financial intelligence determined not so much how much money you make, but how much money you keep, how hard that money works for you, and how many generations you can keep it. Success on the right side requires financial intelligence. If people lack basic financial intelligence, they'll find it hard to survive on the right side of the cash flow quadrant. My rich dad was good with money and with people at work. He had to be. He was responsible for creating money, managing as few people as possible, keeping costs low, and keeping profits high. Those are the skills necessary for success on the right side. It was my rich dad who stressed that your home is not an asset, but a liability. And he could prove it simply by looking at the numbers. My educated dad didn't manage money and people at work, although he thought he did. As the state superintendent of education, he was a government official with a multi-million-dollar budget and thousands of employees. But it was not money he created, it was the taxpayers' money. And his job was to spend all of it. If he didn't spend it, the government would give him less money the next year. So at the end of each fiscal year, his goal was to deplete his budget, which meant he often hired more people to justify the next year's budget. The funny thing was that the more people he hired, the more problems he had. As a young boy observing both fathers, I began to make mental notes of what kind of life I wanted to lead. My educated dad was a voracious reader of books, so he was word literate, but he was not financially literate because he couldn't read numbers on a financial statement. He had to take the advice of his banker and accountant, and both told him that his house was an asset and that it should be his largest investment. Because of this financial advice, not only did my highly educated dad work harder, he also got further into debt. Every time he received a promotion for his hard work, he also got a pay raise. And with each pay raise, he went to a higher tax bracket. Because he was in a high tax bracket and taxes for high income workers in the 60s and 70s was extremely high, his accountant and banker would tell him to buy a bigger house so he could write off the interest payments. He made more money, but all that happened was that his taxes increased and his debt increased. The more successful he got, the harder he had to work and the less time he had with people he loved. Soon, all the children were gone, and he was still working hard just to keep up with the bills. He always thought that the next promotion and pay raise would solve his problem. But the more money he made, the more the same things happened. He got deeper into debt and paid more in taxes. The more frazzled he got, both at home and at work, the more he seemed to depend on job security. The more emotionally attached he got to his job and to a paycheck to pay the bills, the more he encouraged his kids to get a safe and secure job. The more insecure he felt, the more he sought security. Next page. Your two biggest expenses. Because my dad didn't or couldn't read financial statements, he failed to see the money trap he was getting sucked into as he grew more successful. It's the same money trap I see millions of other successful, hardworking people fall into. The reason so many people struggle financially is because every time they make more money, they also increase their two biggest expenses, taxes and interest on debt. To top it all off, the government often offers you tax breaks to get you deeper into debt. Doesn't that make you a little suspicious? At the end of my hardworking, educated dad's life, the little money he did have left to pass on was taken by the government in probate taxes. The search for freedom. I know that many people search for freedom and happiness. The problem is that most people haven't been trained to work from the B and I quadrants. They have been trained instead to search for job security. Because of this training and their increasing debt, most people limit their search for financial freedom to the left side of the cash flow quadrants. Unfortunately, financial security and financial freedom are seldom found on the E or S quadrant. True security and freedom are only found on the right side. When you think about this, and you think about your own situation or situations around you, and a lot of these little golden nuggets they're being dropped, it does make you suspicious, that even to this day, okay, next year, the United States is going to celebrate its 250th birthday. 250 years, this country. And yet, financial education is not a prime part of your education, and yet it's a prime part of your life. So, just a thought for you to chew on for a little bit as we continue to go on. This and the other thing I just wanted to say is it just goes to show you the simplicity of the cash flow quadrants, but the brilliance of it, the insight of understanding the difference between the left side and the right side, the trade hours for dollars on the left side, the quote unquote pursuit of security, and on the right side is not trading hours for dollars, but divorcing, getting rid of that relationship. Because ultimately, when you are fully in the I quadrant, your investments generate your income, and it requires little to no time of your own. You know, One of the things that I talk about often on my radio show is that there's really three types of income: direct, indirect, and passive. Another word for those are active, semi active, and residual. And the name of the game, right, is to have residual income coming in, paying all of your residual expenses and more. So back to the book. Going from job to job in search of freedom. One thing the cash flow quadrant is useful for is to track or observe a person's life pattern. Many people spend their life in search of security or freedom, but wind up instead going from job to job. For example, I have a friend from high school who I hear from every 5 years. He's always excited because he's found the perfect job and the company of his dreams. He loves the company, it's doing exciting things. He loves his work. He has an important title. The pay is great. The people are great. The benefits are great. And his chances for promotion are great. About 4.5 years later, I hear from him again, only this time he's dissatisfied. The company he works for is now corrupt and dishonest, and in his opinion, it doesn't treat its workers with respect. He hates his boss. He was passed over for a promotion, and they don't pay him enough. 6 months go by, and he's happy again because he's found a new job, and the cycle starts anew. His life path looks something like a dog chasing its tail. It looks like this. And then it's just going around and around in circles in the E quadrant. His life pattern is going from job to job. So far, he lives well because he's smart, attractive, and personable. But the years are catching up with him, and the younger people are now getting the jobs he used to get. He has a few $1,000s in savings, nothing set aside for retirement, a house he'll never own, child support payments, college yet to pay, and for his youngest child, 8, lives with his ex-wife, and his oldest child, 14, lives with him. He used to always say to me, I don't have to worry. I'm still young. I have time. I wonder if he's saying that now. In my opinion, he needs to make a serious effort to begin moving to either the B or the I quadrant quickly. A new attitude and a new educational process need to begin. Unless he gets lucky and wins the lottery or finds a rich woman to marry, he's on a course of working hard for the rest of his life. Work until you die. Okay, we're on page 64 now. Doing your own thing. By the way, 93 if you're looking at the page in the PDF file. Doing your own thing. Another common pattern is someone going from E to S. During periods of massive downsizing and unemployment, some people get the message. Instead of looking for another job, they decide to start their own business. This has been a boom in so-called home-based businesses. Many people make the decision to start their own business, do their own thing, and be their own boss. Don't we love that? Their career path looks like this. And so it's an arrow jumping from the E to the S. Of all the life paths, this is the one I feel for the most. Ouch, I feel for the most. In my opinion, being an S can be extremely rewarding and the most risky. I think the S quadrant is the hardest quadrant there is. The failure rates are high, and if you make it, being successful can be worse than failing. That's because if you're successful as an S, you'll work harder than if you were in any of the other quadrants, and you'll work harder for a long time. The reason S's work the hardest is because they typically are the proverbial thief, cook, and bottle washer. They have to do or be responsible for all the jobs that are done by many managers and employees in a bigger company. An S is just an S just starting out often answers the phone, pays the bills, makes the sales calls, tries to advertise on a small budget, handles customers, hires employees, fires employees, fills in when employees don't show up, talks to the tax man, fights off the government inspectors, and on and on and on. And I'll bet you a lot of us can relate to the S quadrant, right? And for many people, and you can see by the book, mistakenly feel that that's the best place to be. But when you are a one man operation, and P.S., lots of doctors are like this, lots of attorneys. Oh man, and I've been in the world hanging around attorneys for the last 10 years, and I can tell you that the majority of them are miserable, and the majority of them are really overworked, and the majority of them don't exactly make a killing either. They're on that same treadmill just at a higher level. And that's what I always describe. The S is really the E, just at a higher pay rate. But as Robert points out in the book, that they're in a much riskier situation, a much more stressful situation. The employee can arrive at 9, leave at 5 in some jobs, and doesn't have to take the workload home with them as much as the S does. So back to the top of the page of page 65 in the book. Personally, I cringe whenever I hear someone say they're going to start their own business. I wish them well, yet I feel great concern for them. I've seen so many E's take their life savings to borrow money from friends and family to start their own business. Only and after 3 or so years of struggle and hard work, the business folds, and instead of life savings, they have debt to pay off. Nationally, 9 out of 10 of these types of businesses fail in 5 years. Nationally, 9 out of 10, 90% of these types of businesses fail in 5 years. Of the one that is remaining, 9 out of 10 of them fail in the next 5 years. In other words, 99 out of 100 small businesses ultimately disappear in 10 years. I think the reason most fail in the first 5 years is due to a lack of experience and a lack of capital. The reason one survivor often fails in the second 5 years isn't due to a lack of capital, but a lack of energy. The hours of long, hard work finally get to the person. Many S's just burn out. Those who survive seem to have become used to the idea of getting up, going to work, and working hard forever. That seems to be all they know and all they do. I have a friend whose parents have spent the last 45 years working long hours in their liquor store. As crime increased in their neighborhood, they had to put up steel bars on the doors and all the windows. Today, money is passed through a slot, much like a bank. I go by occasionally to see them. They're wonderful, sweet people, but it saddens me to see them as virtual prisoners in their own business from 10 in the morning until 2 the next morning, staring out from behind the bars. What a symbol, what a symbol, what an image that is. Many wise S's sell their businesses at their peak before they run out of steam to someone with energy and money. They take some time off and then start something new. They keep doing their own thing and love it. The key is to know when to get out. The worst advice to give your children: if you were born prior to 1930, then go to school, get good grades, and find a safe, secure job was good advice. But for most of you, it's bad advice. Why? The answer is found in taxes and debt. For people who earn their income from the E quadrant, there are virtually no tax breaks left. Today in America, being an employee means you're a 50-50 partner with the government. That means the government ultimately will take 50% or more of an employee's earnings, and much of that before the employee even sees the paycheck. When you consider that the government offers you tax breaks for going further into debt, the path to financial freedom is virtually impossible for most people in the E and S quadrants. I often hear accountants tell clients who begin earning more income from the E quadrant to buy a bigger house so they can receive a bigger tax break. While that may make sense to someone on the left side of the cash flow quadrant, it makes no sense to someone on the right side. And that's very interesting. And P.S., as a real estate agent, thank you, accountants, for causing people to buy bigger houses when maybe that's not the best financial advice that you could give them. So who pays the most taxes? And let me pause before I go into this, because this is going to be a good subject. Anyone want to make any comments or observations, or maybe share something that this gave them an aha to? Go ahead and unmute yourself. And if you can't unmute yourself, put it in the text. I'll give you a second while I have a little bit of my mocha in the morning.
Eric, I already gave everyone a way to open up their microphones or cameras if they have anything that
Awesome.
they want to. Yes.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. It looks like Jameson has his camera open.
He
Good
has his camera
morning.
open. Good
Good
morning,
morning.
Jameson. How are you doing, buddy?
Oh man, I'm doing all right, and I'm loving your reading, and I love your comments. One thing I want to go back to that really stood out to me, page 61 in the book, but about the money trap, and I was watching the success trap and money trap, but exactly going back to the money trap on page 61 in the book, it talks about how the accountant and banker was giving his father, Robert's father, advice. The more successful he became, the more money he made. His banker and his accountant, where he was getting his financial intelligence from and his financial advice from, were telling him to go deeper into debt and giving him the tax breaks to go deeper into debt. Just like you're saying, buy a bigger house, right? Well, that was the financial advice. But the trap was the more money he made, the more he had to do that. And he had to go further and further. And he kept on getting advice from the two financial professionals that he relied upon, was his banker and his accountant. And the tax accountant has one tool or one couple of tools: how to get breaks and credits. And the banker is financially fiscally or motivated by his board or whatever to get more money. So they're trying to loan out more money. So the system is set up, and by the way, they don't teach financial intelligence in school. So the system is designed to get us deeper in the debt and to pay more taxes by default because of the industrial age information. But that's it's and the emotional part he was talking about in that same part is the more insecure he felt, the more he sought security, his father, and that's what he tries to teach Robert about the same thing. And you covered it again in the last part of the thing you were reading. Um, so they not only got us by looking at the financial information and to focus on they're keeping our focus on debt and taxes and then they make us feel insecure. That insecurity breeds more grip on that E and S side. But anyway, there it is. It was just something that stood out at the emotional part, and then like you get that fear and panic. Like, what do I need to do? You find the professionals and they say do more of that, do more of the same thing. It's like, wait a minute, we're going around in that what is called the rat race, that wheel, just going around and around, and locking us in for life, basically. And that's a good way to for corporations and the government to secure money for the rest, for someone's life. But anyway, thank you.
It's a really good point you made, and here's why. Because the emotion is what really drives people. People tend to make decisions based on their emotions, and then they'll justify it with logic, right? They want a bigger house. They want to have that lifestyle. And then they'll justify it by saying, oh, I needed a tax write-off. In fact, there's one thing as a mortgage broker, seeing people's finances right straight up and having conversations about money all the time. And when I hear someone say that at the end of the year, they go to Office Depot and buy extra office supplies because they want the write-off. For some reason, the write-off to them feels better, that they're, I don't know, maybe getting one over the government, but who's really getting it? But then they're not understanding that those same dollars could be put into an investment that grows. You see, the only way and it's funny because as I hear this, one of the big lessons that I have learned is never to take advice from people that don't have the life you dream about. Okay, think about that for a second. You want to take advice, just like Robert Kiyosaki did in his book. He took advice from his rich dad because his rich dad had the life that he wanted. We often take advice, and unfortunately, many times it's our own families that surround us that, they have lots of opinions about what you should do, right? But I don't want to hear any advice from somebody that doesn't have the life that I want, or the things that I want, or the quality of life that I want. And that's why, for example, you know, I would never use a real estate agent that doesn't own his own house. And there's a lot of agents out there that rent. Okay, no credibility. They don't cook what they eat, and they don't know because they didn't have to go through the monthly payments, paying the taxes, going through shopping for insurance and everything. They're not homeowner material. So why take advice from somebody that, is just not there? Same thing with accountants. Because I invest in real estate, my first question to every accountant is, do you own rental property? When the answer is no, the conversation is finished. There's nothing that, for us to continue on to. And we should look at that in every avenue of our life. Back to Jameson's comment about, it's kind of a setup. Why is it that in 250 years that we still don't have financial literacy as a major part? When should you start saving for retirement? As soon as you can, whether it's before you even go to school, keep a savings account. Your family maybe sets up a savings account. But from the day we get our first paycheck, a piece of it should be dedicated, earmarked, and reserved for financial freedom. And if we did that, more people would retire financially independent. Today in our country, the wealthiest country in the world, the top economy in the world, 80% of our workforce, which is still following the advice of the industrial age, is on the dole of the government when they retire. That if they didn't get Social Security, many would suffer a much lower standard of life. And P.S. Social Security ain't that big of a standard of life. So I see that Fernando, you have your hand raised.
Yes, Eric, great topic. I'm learning so much. It's amazing how things, that we are hearing. It sounds different when you're hearing them and then putting them into practice than just hearing theoretical examples, as you alluded to, in regards to who you're going to listen to. I like what you talked about when you said income, and then you actually talked about direct, indirect, and residual. And I think we're so accustomed to direct type of income, and sometimes maybe even indirect, but we really don't understand residual income. And that goes back to the other topic that you talked about, which is doing your own thing, right? Which is the S quadrant is the hardest quadrant to be in. So in order for us to be able to understand residual income, we got to find opportunities that allow us to appreciate residual income, and network marketing does that. And you also talked about quadrant is the hardest quadrant, the quadrant that you got to be a multitask person, do everything, a one-man show. No one does it like you, right? Fear, you don't trust others to do it better than you. And I think most of us make that kind of mistake, and we don't, because maybe we don't understand the duplicating aspects of residual income, and it takes time. It takes anywhere between 3 to 5 years to solidify a residual income, just like everything else, like a property, real estate property takes time to build equity on the property. And I think the time frame of educating yourself is crucially important, and that's why I love the book that we're reading right now, because it's really putting me to think again after being in the industry of network marketing for 31 years. How can we restructure a better way to build a bigger network? And it takes me back again, Eric, to the bigger your network, the bigger your net worth. And I think we got better ways to do things now, thanks to AI, where duplicating becomes a lot easier. And you actually refer a tool, a while back that I'm using right now, and it's easy to use it, and it does all the thinking for you. And I think we're definitely building a third uh, organization with broader tools and greater tools to be able to simplify things, because I don't want to be in S quadrant. And network marketing can also turn into an S quadrant type of situation where you got to do everything and don't have duplication. So I thank you so much for allowing me to understand more about the direct, indirect, and residual income aspects of what we're reading today. I don't want to be a self-employed man. Thanks, Eric.
Well, isn't it amazing? Like I said, to this day, you have to have a group like this or be around people like this to even know that there's a difference between, or to recognize the important, difference between direct income, indirect income, and, you know, passive or residual income. You see, when we get out of school, whether it's high school or college, when we get our first job, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, it's a job where it's direct income only, right? But imagine if from the day one we took 10%, and I'm just picking a number, but we took 10% of our first paycheck and put it into the passive income generating bucket. And we did that when we were 18. And every year, as our income grew, there's a great book called Profit First. And what you want to do is take that money and then set it and forget it. It's in an account, because and as it starts to generate, even if it were in an idiotic savings account, and I said that on purpose, even if you put it in an idiotic savings account, today I just got something that you could get up to 4%, right? 4% on your money. But think about the compounding effect that from 18 to 48, Okay, and that's not even retirement age. That's 30 years. And if you were to put 10% into that account, and even if it all it was is a savings account growing, you would have a sizable amount of money in that account towards your passive or residual income. Throughout your career, you're going to learn to shift out of because you started 100% direct income, 0% indirect, and 0% passive. And you want to be building to get to 100% on the other side of that bridge. And that's what this book really does a good job of separating and explaining in a very simplistic way. So anybody else have anything to say? Just raise your hands. I'll watch for it. But in the interest of time, let's talk about who pays the most taxes. And this is on page 95 of the PDF, or let's see, page 66 of the book. Who pays the most taxes? The rich do not pay a lot in income taxes. Why? Simply because they don't earn their money as employees. The ultra rich know that the best way to avoid taxes legally is by generating income out of the B and I quadrants. If people earn money in the E quadrant, the only tax break they're offered is to buy a bigger house and go deeper into debt. Viewed from the right side of the cash flow quadrant, that isn't financially intelligent. To people on the right side, that's like saying, give me $1 and I'll give you 50 cents back. Taxes are unfair. People, I often hear people say it's un-American to pay not to pay taxes. Americans who say this seem to have forgotten their history. America was founded out of tax protest. They have forgotten the famous Boston Tea Party of 1773. This rebellion sparked the Revolutionary War and was all about taxation, taxation without representation. The rebellion was followed by Shays' Rebellion, the Whiskey Rebellion, Fry's Rebellion, the Tariff Wars, and many others throughout the history of the United States. By the way, does it sound like it's history all over again? There are two other famous tax revolts that weren't staged by Americans, but do demonstrate the passion with which people object to taxation. The story of William Tell is a story of tax protest. That's why he was forced to shoot the apple off his son's head. He was angry about taxes and refused to bow to the tax collector. His punishment was to put his son's life at risk with a target on his head. And then there's Lady Godiva. She pleaded with her husband, the Earl of Mercia, to lower taxes in her town. Her husband said he would lower the taxes if he would ride naked through the town. And she took him up on his offer. Interesting trivia. Tax advantages. Tax may be a necessity of modern civilization, but problems arise when taxes become abusive and mismanaged. As millions of baby boomers begin to retire, they shift from the role of taxpayers to retirees and Social Security recipients. There will be a need to collect more taxes to support the shift. America and other great nations will decline financially. Individuals with money will leave in search of countries that welcome their money instead of penalizing them for having it. A big mistake. A news reporter once asked me how much money I made during the prior year. I replied approximately $1 million. And how much did you pay in taxes? He asked. Nothing, I said. That money was made in capital gains, and I was able to indefinitely defer paying those taxes. I sold 3 pieces of real estate and put them through a Section 1031 exchange under the U.S. Internal Revenue Code. I never touched the money. I just reinvested it into much larger property. A few days later, the newspaper ran this story. Rich man makes $1 million and admits to paying nothing in taxes. I did say something like that, but a few choice words were missing. which distorted the message. I don't know if the reporter was being malicious or if he simply didn't understand what a 1031 exchange is. Whatever the reason, it's a perfect example of different points of view coming from different quadrants. As I said, not all income is equal. Some income is much less taxed than others. Most people focus on income, not assets. You see, now is when the book gets even more interesting and in depth. And P.S., some of this was explained in the first book by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you have not read it, get the book, read it, listen to it on Audible. But it's a great foundation for all of the things that we're going over right now. So most people focus on income, not assets. The reporter earns his money in this column, income. I earn money in this column, assets. And by the way, income and balance sheet, if you're not familiar with those terms or what they are, Google it, go look on YouTube. They'll explain it real interesting. But every company in America that's in business has an income statement and a balance sheet. And most of them have it at minimum monthly. Why we're not taught to do the same as individuals is still beyond me, and why this isn't taught, and why everybody doesn't know what an income statement and a balance sheet is. The reporter earns his money in the E quadrant. I earned my $1 million in the I quadrant. Today, I still hear people say, I'm going back to school so I can get a raise, or I'm working hard so I can get a promotion. Those are words or ideas of a person who's focusing on the income column of the financial statement or the E quadrant. Those are the words of a person who will give half of that raise to the government and work harder and longer to do it. In an upcoming chapter, I'll explain how people on the right side of the cash flow quadrant utilize taxes as an investment, as an asset instead of a liability that it is for most people on the left side. It's not a matter of being unpatriotic. It's about fighting back legally to defend the right to keep as much money that you earn as possible. Countries where people don't protest their taxes often have depressed economies. Get rich quickly. For Kim and me, to go from homeless to financially free quickly meant earning our money in the B and I quadrants. In these quadrants, you can get rich quickly because you can avoid paying taxes legally. And by being able to keep more money and have that money work for us, we found freedom quickly. How to get free? Well, we all want to know. Debt and taxes are the main reasons most people never feel financially secure or achieve financial freedom. I often say, by the way, on my radio show, that debt is the middleman between you and financial freedom. Once you get past debt, you're on your way. The path to security or freedom is found on the right side of the cash flow quadrant. You need to go beyond job security and know the difference between financial security and financial freedom. As you know, my highly educated dad was fixated on job security, as are most people of his generation. He assumed that job security meant financial security until, that is, he lost his job and couldn't find another. My rich dad never talked about job security. He talked instead about financial freedom. The answer to finding the kind of security or freedom you desire can be found in observing the patterns found in the cash flow quadrant. The pattern for job security: people who follow this pattern are often good at performing their job tasks. Many spent years in school and years on the job gaining experience. The problem is that they know little about the B quadrant or the I quadrant, even if they have a retirement plan. They feel financially insecure because they've trained only for job security. And that's the indoctrination, by the way, that happens in our schools, right? Get good grades, get a safe and secure job. That's an indoctrination. We're being taught that, programmed that at an early age. And if it's been going on for 250 years and it hasn't changed, then you have to know that that's by design. I grew up hearing this expression, and I'm going to see what he says about it. Knowledge is power. To become more financially secure, I suggest, in addition to performing their jobs in the E or S quadrants, individuals become educated in the B or I quadrants. By having confidence in their abilities on both sides of the cash flow quadrants, they'll naturally feel more secure, even if they have only a little money. Knowledge is power, and when an opportunity presents itself, they will be prepared to act with confidence. And by the way, that's where I have an issue with that statement. Knowledge is power, but it's really potential power. It's knowledge plus action that is power. And so in that sentence, notice he says that, he just doesn't say it directly. Knowledge is power, and when an opportunity presents itself, they will be prepared. Okay. Didn't say that they were going to take advantage or get it, but they'll be prepared to act with confidence. But it's the old story, right? Three frogs are sitting on a log. One decided to jump off. Put it in the chat. How many frogs are left on the log? And I'll come back to that in just a second. I hate to tell you, Jameson, that's a wrong answer. Three frogs are sitting on a log, and one decides to jump off. How many are on the log? Three. That's right. Because deciding, that's right. Deciding isn't doing. And that is the fundamental difference. Thank you, Martha. You got it right. That's why our maker gave us two legs. If we had only one leg, we would always feel wobbly and insecure. By having knowledge in two quadrants, one on the left and one on the right, we tend to feel more secure. People who know their job or their profession only have one leg. Every time the economic winds blow, they tend to wobble more than people with two legs. Think about that. If you had a business or you had investments that provided income, even when the economy changes, because there's really, and I talk about this also on my radio show, there's two economies. There's the global economy, the one that you read about in the papers and that you have zero capability to affect. And then there's your economy, your private economic world that is decided, acted upon, and a result of what you do. And see, if more people were willing to hear that it is the result of what you do, we are the result of the decisions and the actions that we take. So back to the pattern for financial security. Instead of just putting money into a retirement account and hoping for the best, this loop signifies that people feel confident in their education as both an investor and an employee. Just as we study at school to learn a job, I suggest you study to become a professional investor. The reporter who was upset about my making $1 million in my asset column and not paying taxes never asked me the question, how did you make the $1 million? To me, that's the real question. Legally avoiding the taxes is easy. Making the million wasn't so easy. A second path to financial security could be going from the E to the B and the B to the E. And this is what financial security looks like for an S. Going from the S to the I, and then the I back to the S, back to the I. The average American millionaire is self-employed, lives frugally, and invests for the long term. The pattern above reflects that financial life path. Another great book, by the way, that illustrates this is The Millionaire Next Door. Great book, read it. This path, the S to the B, is often the path that many great entrepreneurs like Bill Gates take. It's not the easiest, but in my mind, it is one of the best. From the S to the B. Two are better than one. Back in chapter 2, I discussed how the average rich person earns 70% of their income from the right side of the column and less than 30% from the left side. I've found that no matter how much money people make, they feel more secure if they operate in more than one quadrant. And let me just pause this question. Who here, how many quadrants are you in? How many quadrants are you in today? Put it in the chat. This is a great question. And think about it for a second. How many quadrants and which quadrants are you in right now? Okay. Millionaire firefighters. I have two friends who are examples of success on both sides of the cash flow quadrant. They have tremendous job security with benefits, and they have also achieved great financial wealth on the right side. Both are firefighters who work for the city government. They enjoy good, steady pay, excellent benefits, and retirement plans, and work only 2 days a week. 3 days a week, they work as professional investors. The remaining 2 days, they relax and spend time with their family. One buys old houses, fixes them up, and collects rent. He owns 45 houses that pay him $10,000 a month after debt, taxes, maintenance, and management and insurance. He earns $3,500 a month as a firefighter, making his total monthly income more than $13,000 and his annual income about $150,000 and growing. P.S. Remember, this book was written 20 years ago. He has 5 more years before retirement, and his goal is to have $200,000 a year in income at age 56. Not bad for a government employee with 4 kids. The other friend spends his time analyzing companies and taking major long-term positions in stocks and options. His portfolio is now more than $3 million. By the way, they didn't say it in the previous paragraph, but I promise you that 45 houses is more than $3 million too. If he cashed out and moved his money into an investment that earns 10% interest a year, he would have an income of approximately $300,000 per year for life, even taking into account average market fluctuations. Again, not bad for a government employee and 2 kids. Both friends have enough passive income from their 20 years of investing to have retired by age 40, but they both enjoy their work and want to retire with full benefits. Then they'll be free to enjoy the benefits of success gained from both sides of the cash flow quadrant. Great example. Money alone does not bring security. I have met many people who have millions in their retirement accounts and still feel insecure. Why? Because it's money generated from their job or business. They often have the money invested in a retirement account, but know little to nothing about the subject of investments. If that money disappears, their working days are over. What do they do then? And their money day and their working days are over. What do they do then? In other words, when you get to a certain age, the return of capital becomes more of a concern than the return on capital. And that's why you have to have financial literacy. In times of great economic change, and I see that we're coming up to the end, and let me just see really quick if we're even close to looks like we're going to have to, oh yeah, let's see if we'll make a race to the end. Where was I? Millionaire firefighters, we did that. Da, 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 da. Money alone does not bring financial security. I have met many people who have made millions in their retirement. We did that. If that money disappears and their working days are over, what do they do then? Well, in times of great economic change, there are always great transfers of wealth. Even if you don't have much money, it's important to invest in your education because when the changes come, you'll be better prepared to handle them. Don't be caught unaware and afraid. As I said, no one can predict what will happen, so it's best to be prepared for whatever happens. And that means getting educated now. So path, the pattern for financial freedom is having a business that funds your I that funds your business. This is the pattern my rich dad recommended. It's the path to financial freedom. This is true financial freedom because in the B quadrant, people are working for you. And in the I quadrant, your money is working for you. You are free to work or not to work. Your knowledge in these two quadrants has brought you complete physical freedom from work. If you look at the ultra rich, this is their pattern. The loop around the B and the I signifies the income pattern of people like Bill Gates, Rupert Murdoch, and Warren Buffett. A quick word of caution, though. The B quadrant is much different from the I quadrant. I've seen successful Bs sell their businesses for millions, and their newfound wealth goes to their head. They tend to think that their dollars are a measure of their IQ, so they swagger on down to the I quadrant and lose it all. The game and rules are different in all of the quadrants, which is why I recommend education over an ego trip. Just as in the case of financial security, having two quadrants gives you greater stability in the world of financial freedom. The choice of paths, the preceding patterns are the different financial paths people choose. Unfortunately, most people choose the path of job security. When the economy starts wobbling, they cling ever more desperately to job security and wind up spending their lives pursuing it. At a minimum, I recommend becoming educated in financial security, which is feeling confident about your job and feeling confident about your ability to invest in good and bad times. A big secret is that true investors make more money in bad markets. They make their money because non-investors are panicking and selling when they should be buying. I'm not afraid of the possible coming economic changes because change means wealth is being transferred. And what he doesn't say is it transfers from the knowledgeable to the unknowledgeable, from the aware to the unaware. I'm sorry, from the unaware to the aware. Your boss cannot make you rich. We're almost there. A friend of mine sold his company, and in the day of the sale, he put more than $15 million in his bank account. On the other hand, his employees had to look for jobs. At the farewell party, which filled with tears, there were also undercurrents of extreme anger and resentment. Although he paid them well for years, most were financially no better off on their last day of work than they were on their first day of work. Many people realized that the owner of the company had become rich while they spent all those years collecting their paychecks and paying bills. The reality is that your boss's job is not to make you rich. Your boss's job is to make sure you get your paycheck. It's your job to become rich if you want to. And that job begins the moment you receive your paycheck. If you have poor money management skills, then all the money in the world won't save you. If you budget your money wisely and learn about either the B or the I quadrants, then you're on your own path to great personal financial fortune and, most importantly, freedom. My rich dad used to say to his son and me that the only difference between a rich person and a poor person is what they do in their spare time. I agree with that statement. I realize that people are busier than ever before and free time is more and more precious. Yet I believe that if you're going to be busy anyway, be busy on both sides of the cash flow quadrant. If you do that, you'll have a better chance of eventually finding more free time and more freedom, more financial freedom. When at work, work hard. But remember that what you do after work with your paycheck and your spare time will determine your future. If you work hard on the left side, you'll work hard forever. If you work hard on the right side, you have a chance of finding freedom. So the path I recommend, take a snapshot. I'm often asked by people in the E and the S quadrants, what would you recommend? I recommend the same path my rich dad recommended to me, the same path that people like Ross Perot and Bill Gates took. The path looks like this: from the S to the B, from the E to the B, from the B to the I. Occasionally people reply, but I'd rather be an investor, to which I say, then go to the I quadrant. If you have plenty of money and lots of free time, go straight to the I quadrant. But if you don't have an abundance of time and money, the path my rich dad recommends is safer. I's invest in B's. In most cases, people do not have an abundance of time and money, so they ask another question. By the way, if anyone has to leave, I totally understand. I just want to make it a mission to get to the end, and we're within a couple pages now of the end. And so, in most cases, people do not have an abundance of time and money, so they ask another question. Why do you recommend the B quadrant first? The discussion usually takes an hour or so, but I'll just summarize it, my reasons in a few lines. One, experience and education. If you are successful as a B, you'll have a better chance of developing into a powerful I. If you first develop a solid business sense, you can become a better investor. You'll be able to identify other good Bs. True investors invest in successful Bs with stable business systems. It's risky to invest in an E or an S who doesn't know the difference between a system and a product, or who lacks excellent leadership skills. Leadership skills. Two, cash flow. If you have a business that is up and running, then you should have free time and the cash flow to support the ups and downs of the I quadrant. Many times I meet people from the E and S quadrants who are so tight on cash that they can't afford to take any financial loss. One market swing and they're wiped out because they operate financially at the red line. The reality is that investing is capital and knowledge intensive. Sometimes it takes lots of capital and requires a lot of time to gain the necessary knowledge. Many successful investors have lost many times before winning. Successful people know that success is a poor teacher. Learning comes from making mistakes. Boom, nugget. Learning comes from making mistakes. And in the I quadrant, mistakes cost money. If you lack both knowledge and capital, it's financial suicide to try to become an investor. By developing the skill of becoming a good B first, you'll also be providing the cash flow necessary to help you become a good investor. The business you develop as a B will provide the cash to support you as you gain the education to become a good investor. Once you have gained the knowledge to become a successful investor, you'll understand how I can say it does not always take money to make money. Good news. The good news is that it's easier than ever before to be successful in the B quadrant because of technology. Although it is not as easy as just getting a minimum wage job, the systems are in place now for more and more people to find financial success as Bs. And the next good news is that we have completed chapter 3, why people prefer security over freedom. And I think that was a great chapter. I know we're a little bit over time. Uh, does anyone have any final comments, ahas, or advice? Go ahead, raise your hand, or just directly unmute yourself if you want to be first. Jameson.
So
First
keep
of all, Jameson, thanks for being so engaged. I really appreciate that. I know that you get what's going on, and you're making certain changes in your life, and it's awesome to watch that evolution. So thank you.
Well, thank you for being, as you said, get your advice from someone that's doing what you want to do. Thank you for being the one who is leading the way and been doing it for over 30 years. So I want to get my advice from someone that's been doing it and doing it successfully for over 30 years. Thank you very much for being an inspiration to know where to go and who to listen to. one of the things it says in here, he kept on alluding to the answer to all this is financial education. And then he laid it out in the last few sentences that or things he talked about why being a B, the cash flow quadrant, and the ES going to the B first. And that's where we get our education, I believe, is from becoming a business owner and learning about business systems. And like in the chat, I said I'm a E, S, and I. The I is because I work with one of our insurance products, and I invest in that way, which I can actually loan. But it's technically not a pure I because it's more of a saving strategy. But to get the to get the financial education, is he's saying is through becoming a B. So that was pretty interesting. Thank you.
Well, give yourself more credit, Jameson, because actually, whether you do it directly, picking individual stocks and bonds and crypto and all that other noise that's out there, or whether you do it through a good financial advisor, you are, in fact, when you put money into an investment for the future, you are participating in the I quadrant. So, by all means, I know, and because I know you, you definitely are an investor. And PS, as you know, it takes um, focus and sacrifice because that money could be going, anywhere else. So you're not sort of an investor, you are an investor, number one. Number two is that you're also a business owner. You have your own business. What you probably, remember, direct, indirect, and residual.
Mhm.
Your investments are going to create that residual income, a little bit at first, and over time, it's a snowball effect. Whether you're an employee somewhere, whether you're self-employed, or and many people confuse self-employment and business as being similar. I'm in business for myself, but business, self-employed just means you have some trade that you do and presumably are good at. A business, as they were saying before, is not a product and it's not an activity, it's a system. It's a system, and I always use McDonald's not because I like the food, I don't, but because at McDonald's, you can teach a pimpled face 15-year-old to put fries in the basket and then throw it in a bag and serve it. The, it requires no great math skills, no great physical ability. It's a system that you can plug and play. A person who's 15 or 80 years old could perform that system. And when you get a consistent, scalable outcome across the country, the fries in California are pretty much the same as the fries in New York City, Florida, and everywhere in between. When you have a business, it's when first of all, you have a system. So you do have a business, right? You have a proven system that can become plug and play. But it's when you have people leveraged, whether they be employees or subcontracted or partners, when you have other people, and this goes back to the great saying, the quote by J. Paul Getty, I would rather have 1% of the efforts of 100 people than 100% of my own efforts. And if you've ever been in that position, you realize that the 1% of 100 people, because I can never put 100% of my efforts 24/7 because I got to sleep, I got to stop, I got to rest. So at best, I have 66% of my efforts, but I could still have 110 other people, which would be far greater in the outcome. And one of the reasons why people build teams in the real estate business, why, you have businesses that have that, hierarchy in the insurance business, agencies that build and grow their agencies. And in the world of network marketing, that you have that ability to build an organization that, is off doing their own things for their own reasons, but all adhering to a proven system. So, yep, I think this is kind of sums it all up. What do you recommend? Whether you're in the E or the S, get to the B. because that's where the education really happens. And it's funny, I was at a networking event this past Thursday. It was a grand opening for a medical center that I was invited to come to. And as I'm talking to some of the people that and we knew certain people, and the name of a developer that I worked for back in the 80s, who was I I joined his company right in 1990 when the market was crashing. So it was a very chaotic time. It was exactly the wrong time to be getting into that business. But here's what I told this conversation the other night is that I learned more in that chaos than I did in the several years before working in an institution, one of South Florida's largest banks, where I was just an employee, a cog, a limited exposure and just a part of the machine. And I only had a little task, a little area of credit analysis. But in the chaos of being the right hand man of a developer, a business owner, I got to see and experience, you know, way more. And I learned way more that has benefited me to this day. I still draw upon the things that I learned and the confidence that I got, the way he dealt with lawyers and accountants and investors and everything. So, yes, I totally agree with Robert Kiyosaki that whether it's a little business or other business, become part of a business, an influential part of a business, or start your own business, or buy a business, one way or another. That is where the education happens. And you can have it on somebody else's dime where it doesn't cost you money, but it will cost you effort, and it'll always cost you some combination of time and effort and perhaps money.